Hey guys, hope you're doing well. For this episode, I had the luxury of speaking to Kalai Barlow of Obscura Film, and it's genuinely one of the best conversations I've had with anyone on this podcast. I think it was terrific and literally up there, one of my, not that I rank them, but it's one of my favorites. I thought it was amazing. And we covered her history and how she got into film and her importance that she sheds light on things regarding to representation and telling our own stories. And I hope you guys enjoy it. One disclaimer, um, we're getting better at trying to get the audio right. We had a bit of audio challenges when we were recording this. So, just telling you that up front, thank you for your patience. Listen to the story if you can, overcome that hurdle, and you'll be inspired. Thanks so much.
Well, everybody knows the Zimbabwean voice now, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful voice, that one. One of unity, one of togetherness, one of peace, one of love, That's the way forward. Oga, Oga.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm just really appreciative for your time. As I was saying to you when we had a call last week, I'm such a fan of your work, especially at Obsurca Film. I think the team that you've put together is phenomenal, and I was just going through like YouTube and Instagram and going through some of the recent stuff you're doing. I was just really impressed at the quality and the intent behind the work that you're doing. So thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super honored, and yeah, I absolutely love the initiative and the core of what you're doing. So thanks for having me.
Super. So to kick us off, how have you been? I know we spoke, recently, and you were traveling a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. So how have you been? What have you been up to? And what's been happening?
I've been really good. It's been quite a whirlwind of a time. We moved back to Zimbabwe about a year and a half ago now. And it's been a really crazy time. For us, it's been super busy, which we're very grateful for. We've been working on a really kind of diverse, wonderful range of different projects and traveling all over Zimbabwe. So yeah, it's been great. I'm feeling optimistic and just in love with being back home.
Super. And who is we?
So we as Obsurca Films, we have very talented Richard Watson, who's our cinematographer and editor, and Jessica Pulser, who's our producer and production manager. So the three of us are Obsurca Films. We're a tiny, tiny little team. And then we'll outsource crew for bigger shoots. Yeah.
So, and how's that been in terms of like since you've been back? How's it been in terms of like just shooting and picking stories and going about it? Sometimes like film is one of these like interesting professions where it's often criticized for being very it's very costly to kind of get a production across the line. So and then of course in terms of where the film industries are globally, it's sometimes like, let's say, LA or Nigeria or Bollywood, or for example, big markets, if I can call it that. How has it been moving back to Zimbabwe to say film in Zim? We think this is important. Has that been a bit of a trip, or maybe walk us through what that's been like for you?
It's been challenging. It has been challenging. We came back to Zimbabwe with the intention of we want to tell Zimbabwean stories. We want to tell stories that mean something to us and that have the potential to make an impact in people's lives, Zimbabwean lives. And I think that's kind of been the motivation that's kept pushing us forward. In terms of getting work and just kind of, I guess, educating people in how expensive it is to make a film has been quite challenging because we don't have a massive industry in Zimbabwe. It's a tiny, tiny industry, and I think there are so many guys out there who are working super hard, but we live in this mentality of, someone, you put forward your rate and then people try and negotiate you down to what they think is realistic or what they can afford. And so it's really tough to make a sustainable living as a filmmaker here. So we are busy trying to build structures and trying to change that, trying to support fellow filmmakers and open dialogue and create ways that we can make it realistic for people to be able to make a film in the context of, the Zimbabwean financial situation, as well as a sustainable source of income for filmmakers.
And why did it's this kind of like artist dilemma sometimes, where it's like people's like, sometimes people get pushed away from art because of like the commercial viability sometimes, but it's important. I think art is as important as anything in the world. Why do you guys think it's important to tell Zimbabwean stories? Because you guys have charting this way, and you've been recognized for it. But despite the challenges, why, do you think it's important?
I think in the world that we are living in now, it's representation is critical to the future of humanity. That's how kind of deeply important I feel it is. We've grown up, we've had this conversation in Zimbabwe where we've watched TV and we've seen characters and role models who a lot of people haven't been able to resonate or connect with these role models. They're not realistic. They're not real in the Zimbabwean context, and that creates this kind of false expectation that you feel you have to live up to in your life. And so we feel that it's really important to tell Zimbabwean stories, to inspire young people, to encourage young people, to give you something to connect with, something that's real and kind of something that you can work towards, that is authentic to.
Well, you said something very poignant, which is like now representation is one of the most important things in the world right now in many ways. When you were growing up, did you ever feel that you were represented in terms of some of the stories that you would see on television?
Yeah, so in terms of representation, I think a lot of the television and media that I was exposed to was American. So no, I didn't really resonate with it. And my background, which I'll tell you a little bit about in more detail. I grew up in Zimbabwe and then moved to Ireland, and so I became like a third culture kid. I moved to Ireland, but I wasn't Irish. I came back to Zimbabwe, but I wasn't Zimbabwean. And so I had this kind of fragmented sense of identity, and I didn't see that on the screens anywhere. And I think it's super important because there are so many people who have had to flee their countries for whatever reason all over the world. And up until recently, I don't think we've heard these stories or seen them in feature films and spoken about them. So yeah.
Phenomenal. So on that point, you mentioned that you, of course, are a third culture kid. So take us back to like some of your childhood. Where were you born? How did you grow up? Do you have siblings? Where are your parents from? Just so we have a bit of a picture around, who you are as a person.
Okay, so I was born in Zimbabwe in the late 80s, which is a wonderful time in terms of art and culture. And I grew up in quite an unconventional home. I lived in Chimanimani, deep in the mountains, on the Mozambique border with my parents, my mum and dad, and my brothers. And we lived completely self-sufficiently. My parents were both artists. My mum studied dance in London and then theatre in Cape Town. And so she was kind of involved in and out of the theatre scene in Zimbabwe. And then my dad was an artist in so many different mediums. He had a passion for stone sculpture, and so he worked with some incredible sculptors. And he also was passionate about African music, so he worked with West African instruments like djembe drums. So I kind of was, they surrounded themselves with this incredible community of artists. And 80s and 90s in Zimbabwe, there was such a vibrant art scene. And I mean, everywhere you looked, there was art. You know, there were talented people. And I think that time in my life definitely had a huge part to play in the trajectory of my career choice. So that was early on. When I was around 7 or 8, we moved into Chimani and got quite involved in the Chimani Arts Festival, which was also incredible. So we had this wonderful exposure to Zimbabwean music. And I think that's where I had my first memories, and I really connected with Zimbabwean music through the likes of Tuku. So I was around about 11 years old when I moved to Ireland. It was quite, you know, I was moving into my teenage years. It was a bit of a turbulent time emotionally anyway. And then we moved continent. We were in a completely different environment. At that time, Ireland wasn't part of the EU yet, so they didn't have that many foreigners living in Ireland. So I started high school, and in the whole high school, I was one of 2 foreigners. So the Irish, I think due to their kind of, their whole kind of struggle and war and everything that went on there, they were quite guarded against foreigners, and so I experienced quite a bit of bullying, very physical. And so it was a super...
Physical also?
Yes, yeah.
Damn.
And so I think it was a super turbulent time. I became very introverted, and I became an observer, really. And although as tough as it was, looking back now, I think that it was that kind of really sparked this innate curiosity within me for how society treats minority groups. And I became very passionate about human rights, about equality, and I kind of dived into looking at other areas in the world. I was particularly interested in the East and what was going on there in Africa. And it kind of sparked this real passion within me to want to be involved in something bigger than myself and in some way making an impact on other people's lives. So that was my high school years in Ireland. I studied...
Wait, before I'm gonna pause you there. I'm gonna pause you there. Two questions. Why Chimani? Not that Chimani Mani is beautiful, by the way, but why did your parents choose Chimani Mani as a place to? Were they born there, or what was the? I've never heard of someone saying I grew up in Chimani Mani. I've never ever heard of that before. So
my dad moved back to Zimbabwe from South Africa when he was in his early 20s, and he immediately got involved in stone sculpture with Eddie Messiah and Joseph Ntandarico, incredible artists. And so he started getting involved with them and the whole art scene in Zimbabwe. And I don't know, I think he just decided that he didn't, just his mindset at the time, he wanted to kind of almost live in completely separate from society, from what was
out the matrix, away from the matrix.
Absolutely, away from the matrix. He wanted to create this beautiful home, which he envisioned to have a family, which he eventually did. And I don't know, he just has such a beautiful perspective, and he wanted to be close to nature. Chimani Mani, if you've ever been there, is so incredible. The Eastern Highlands. I mean, it's really, really special. And I think he was fortunate enough to go out there. He fell in love with it, and he managed to buy like a small plot of land with a group of other people. And then my mum who had also just moved to Zimbabwe at the time, and she wanted the same thing, and they wanted to raise a family, and they homeschooled us as well in Mani Mani. And yeah, that's kind of how they wanted to live their lives. They were hippies, essentially. They were rebels against society.
To put it short, to put it bluntly.
And they still are.
And they still are hippies.
Still are.
You know, I've always been like, well, not always. I've been quite obsessed with cities for a long time. But then the older I grow, the less disenchanted I feel by them. I think they are cool for meeting people, and there are a lot of opportunities there for work and so on and so forth. But I honestly, like, the older I grow, I think a lot later in my life, I really see myself being closer to nature. But honestly, just away from like the noise and the stuff, and you know what I mean? Like, it's the nature, being close to what is free. Really, like the best things in life truly are free. And I think that's why I asked. I was like, what was going on there that made your parents, made that decision? Because I think there's something that they were living, which I think is important for people to know, that cities aren't the only place. And sometimes getting away from the matrix, I think, is highly underrated. But I think it's an idea that is worth exploring.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a radical thing to do in the society that we live in, to kind of to make that a sustainable way. But at the same time, it's definitely doable. And if you look at most of Zimbabwe, in fact, that they're living out in nature, and they're making it happen. It's a very simple life, but it's a beautiful life.
And nature has what you have. Nature has what you need already. It already has what you need.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Pick n Pay isn't the only place you can get food. And I love Pick n Pay, don't get me wrong. But I think there are alternative ways to choose life. And the second thing I wanted to touch on was, like, the thing about, being Zimbabwean and growing up in the area that we grew up in, where a lot of people were leaving. Similar to yourself, I moved abroad. I think some people are lucky to go unscathed, but we'll be lying to ourselves if we're to say there will be no casualties. Like, we'll be lying to ourselves. Like, if we're honest in the fact that this way in which we've migrated and what have you is okay, but it's not normal. And in that migration, people get burnt and get bullied, both verbally and physically. There will be casualties, and I've seen it in my own family and friendships. I didn't think I had it, but then I realized with me, it was always, my trauma was maybe bleeding into my work all the time. I wasn't physically crying, but it was always in the stuff I was working on. I was like, oh gosh, it was always bleeding into the stuff that I was working on. So I fully resonate with that notion of, like, I wasn't bullied, but maybe my grief was expressed in other ways,
Absolutely.
But as you said, like, sometimes being abroad, you go through some hard stuff, but you gain some perspective and some tools that you can make, that help you move in the world. So you said Ireland for you was quite useful in the end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to touch on what you're saying, it's an emotional thing to leave a home where you had grown up and what you're familiar with, and then to move to a completely different environment. It's painful, and there's a lot of shedding of who you thought you were and how you fitted into society. And you've got to start from scratch and kind of figure out your identity all over again, which is painful, but at the same time, massive growth happens within that. And I think it softens you. It can either harden or soften you as a person. For me, I think it softened me quite a lot. I think I felt a lot of empathy for minority groups in particular. And it just kind of really made me become, like I said, an observer, and just observe how minority groups are treated, and just all of the issues all over the world. And it kind of really made me interested in that. So yeah, and it also teaches you a lot about people, different cultures. You just have the capacity to empathize with all sorts of different people from all walks of life. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Super, super, super. So you've gone to Ireland. The whole family's there now. We're trying to figure it out. Funny enough, I know a few Zimbabweans in Ireland, which is very weird. But anyway, so you're in Ireland now, and then you say, and so that was for junior school. Was that the same for high school as well? Were you there throughout the whole process?
So I was actually homeschooled for junior school in Zimbabwe and then high school
Yes,
in Ireland.
high school in Ireland.
And
Sorry, right?
then,
Yeah.
so yeah, during high
So,
school,
so your first time at school,
yeah,
school. What?
so it was
That's so traumatic.
a huge
That's so traumatic. Oh my goodness, that's so traumatic. Oh. Woo!
yeah, so teenage years in Ireland. So my parents also, for them, they had to start from scratch, new country.
Yeah.
They were working, they were doing best they could to support us. And I realized very quickly that if I wanted anything, I had to work for it myself. And luckily in Ireland, you have opportunities to go and get a job. Like if you want to make some money, you can go and waitress, you can go and work in a hotel and you get paid quite well. So I learned that from pretty early on. I was very independent and I think I got my first job at 14 washing dishes. And I was like, I want to make my own way. I want to save my money and I want to go and see the world and experience different cultures. And so throughout school, I was working. I went and I studied art after high school. And I absolutely loved art. I wanted to explore something creative. But I think at the same time, I felt like this isn't fulfilling enough for me yet. I want to go and find my place in the world and figure out who it is I am. And I wanted to somehow make an impact that was bigger than myself. And so I worked, saved my money, and in that I kind of realized I was quite good at working in the hospitality and the service industry. I loved people. I loved people watching. I think that's kind of where I really fell in love with humanity and like the little nuances and, the same guy that comes in for his coffee every day, you learn his personality, and that was so beautiful to me. And looking back as well, it did so much good in my career as a filmmaker because I learned how to think very quickly under high pressure situations. I learned how to work long hours. I learned how to read people, which all falls into filmmaking. You need that. So anyway, off on a tangent. I saved money.
Wait, I'm gonna pause you there. That's so poignant. That's so poignant because I was thinking about this exact idea today, where it's like you're looking for, and looking for self. I guess, like, I think everyone, at least my main thing is like it's important to try and find yourself if you haven't found it yet, at least, and try, or if not, at least try. And then sometimes some of the jobs that or whatever career or thing you want to do, but sometimes all of these jobs that you do give you information about yourself, how you engage with the world, what it is that you like about working, what the world resonates, what the world likes from you, and all of these various things. And I have these. I actually wrote down every single job I've ever had, like from when I was 16, 17. I wrote down every single. I think there were 17, and I wrote them down. And I was like, "What was the highlights of all of these?" But I had information. I said, "Ooh," and it was random. It was stuff like waiting tables. I found incredibly fun, not because of it's intense. It's intense, but it was the people, like it's what I'm doing now, talking to you. That was like the most fun. It was so fun, like talking to people, or like working retail at a tourist shop. Random, but it's fascinating speaking to a person from across the world that you've never building rapport is something. But what I'm trying to say is that all of these various jobs that you work, or if I was working in sales at like a real estate company, it's talking to people. All of these things, they give you information, and they can be useful tools to help you understand yourself and engaging with they aren't the final thing, but they can help act as markers for you to remember. I don't know if do you find that was similar for you in like hospitality and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Never underestimate anything you do in life. You're going to learn something from. You can either make a job, like a massive weight on your shoulders and, oh, I hate waiting tables, or you can look at it as an opportunity to learn. And I think that's how I looked at it. I worked with a lot of Polish people and Eastern Europeans, people from all over the world. And
Yes.
I loved hearing their stories. One of my most memorable times in Ireland was
Yes.
I worked in this boutique hotel, and we used to make beds, clean toilets, really unglamorous jobs. But I absolutely loved it because I used to chat to these Polish people and Ukrainians and hear their interesting stories. And when you ask questions and when you talk to someone, no matter where they're from in the world, you start seeing threads of some kind of something in common, some kind of shared humanity. And that was beautiful for me. So I loved that time in my life.
Yeah, I remember I used to work at wait table, and I can speak about, like, I would speak to Spanish people. I think Spain was going through like a huge recession at this time, and sometimes similar working table. I'll be waiting, and they'll be like, some of them were doing the dishwashing, and then and there was so much. You could see some people had so much anger. They'll be like, "Yo, where you from?" We start talking. It's like, I'm actually an architect or I'm an engineer, but I've come to Scotland to learn English. And I was like, man, of course, I understand, I'm Zimbabwean. Of course, I was in university, but I was like, I get the frustration.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it in different. I remember being like, damn, we're actually there's a lot more shared humanity than we actually care to.
Yeah.
If we look, we're a lot more similar than we think we are,
Absolutely.
With you said that, of course, you learned that, but then also it gave you opportunity to empower yourself financially to go out into the world and help find yourself. So where did you go, and what did you find when you went there?
So I went to a whole bunch of different places. I actually went to the States for a little bit. I went to India. I went to the Netherlands, Sweden. I was in Sweden working for a bit. But all the while, all of these places, as beautiful and wonderful as they were, my heart was calling for Africa and calling for me to go back home, as it were, in my mind at the time. And so I found this wonderful opportunity to go and work in Cape Town in social work, and it was along the lines with I wanted to get into humanitarian aid, and I wanted to do something meaningful. And so I decided to go to Cape Town. I feel like a bit of a deer in the headlights. I was in my early 20s at that time, and I arrived into Cape Town, beautiful, vibrant city, and I went and I worked in a township, and it was really, really eye-opening for me. I had this idea of like, I want to go and make an impact on the world, and I walked in and I got shown reality, huge in a huge way, and I very quickly realized, who am I to come and teach these little kids? I've grown up in a completely different culture. I'm still trying to find myself. Who am I to in here and try and like teach these people that needs to come from their community and from their people, and so it was quite disheartening and heartbreaking for me, because I felt like this is what I wanted to do. So I then came back to Zimbabwe, and I said, let me try and figure out something in Zimbabwe, and let me see, let me just explore some options. So I started up my own little organization, which I did for about a year or so, and I was bringing in various different people from all over the world to come and figure out strategies and ways to train people on the ground who could then train people in communities. It was a lot. I think I was too young at the time to get involved in it. It was a lot of responsibility. It was really tough, and I actually ended up then just saying, look, I'm going to take a pause on this. I'm going to go. I was running out of money, didn't have any financial support. I'm going to go back to Sweden. I'm going to work do the season in Sweden, save a bit of money, and figure out what I want to do. Life had other plans. I fell pregnant with my now 7-year-old son at that time. Made a wonderful Zimbabwean guy. And then I was faced with this decision, right, where do I want to raise my child? I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to go to Europe. But there was something in me that just, that closeness to nature that we speak of, and the softness of Zimbabwean people. And I just felt like I want to raise my child here. So I stayed in Zimbabwe we were here for a couple of years, and then, that's when the whole filmmaking journey came about.
Oof, a lot. There's a lot going on. Woo, it's a trip. I'm trying to think where to start. I think there's even before the film, there's been a lot of intent around like, I want to help, I want to be of service. And I'm realizing, how can I be of service? Okay, this is not the right way. This might be the way. Oh, but it's expensive. So it's like, but the intent has always been the same across all the board. It's helping people, empowering people, and finding whatever is the best way to do that. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, absolutely. I've had, I think I can go back as far as from when I was maybe 10 years old or so, where I've had that one common thread that if ever I veer off the path and I'm kind of doing something that's not really I'm meant to be doing, I have this very, very strong pull towards making an impact.
And well, firstly, like, amazing that you managed to, of course, take. Here's the thing. I always say the word intent specifically because with all of us, sometimes even with this podcast, as an example, there might be a time, not to put it out there, I might say the wrong thing or go about something in the wrong way, and that's part of being human, right? But but you always look at the intent to be like, okay, well, what was Kalai trying to do? Or what was Dumi trying to say? I think so intent is the most important thing because it always brings you back to it keeps you guided throughout, So whether you are, in Cape Town, whether that's in Zim, I don't think, it shouldn't be hard I think never be hard on yourself for it because your intent was pure and, and that has guided you throughout. So the question I was having throughout this whole process, which was like, had you ever picked up a camera at this stage or?
Yeah. So I love photography. Always had loved photography. My mum, when we were in Ireland, my mum studied photography, and I always had a camera in some shape or form. Back in those days, I had those disposable cameras.
Those one from Boots, the one you get from Boots, or like the
exactly.
From like Kodak.
And I was constantly. I think it was what I was in love with was documenting moments in time. I really, really loved that. And if you went to my house as a 20-something-year-old, my whole walls were filled with photographs. This was before Instagram and Facebook. I really loved documenting, and particularly people. People was my passion. So throughout my 20s, I, in some way or form, had a camera. I definitely hadn't honed in on the skill yet, or even thought of it in that sense. But it was there. It was there in a big way. And my younger brother, he actually picked up a camera when he was 9 years old. And he started making films. And I was always so inspired by him. And I encouraged him quite a lot. He's now a film director based in London. And he's incredibly talented. But throughout his journey, I remember looking at him and just being in awe of how brave he was, because he just decided at 9 years old, he was like, this is what I'm doing. And he just went.
At 9, as a kid, he was like, nope. This
9, we were like,
wow.
So cute. Oh, sweet. Nathan has like,
wow.
That's.
He was like, no, this is
like,
serious.
Oh.
This is serious.
At around 16, we were like, no, even earlier, maybe 14, we were like, whoa, he's actually really, really talented. And then we started encouraging him. By 16, he was already making money, making music videos and whatever he could at the time. But he was already making money as a filmmaker. So he inspired me a lot. But yeah, the camera was there. It was always kind of in the periphery. I just hadn't put all the pieces of the puzzle together, I don't think.
So what was the moment where you said, because you've been, of course, traveling the world, learning about yourself. Firstly, what did you learn about yourself in your travels? What did you learn?
What did I learn about myself? Do you know what? I think I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
We all are.
I feel
We all are, honestly. Yeah.
if I could pick one particular thing about myself that I learned was that following my heart was always the way to go. You know, I'd always have this kind of struggle between mind and heart. And whenever I overthought, or whenever I was like, I should be doing this, you know, I'm turning this age and this is what they say I should be doing, it just didn't feel right. And it was like this guttural, instinctual thing. And I think I've been driven so much in my life by my heart and my gut, and I've just gone with what feels right. And I've kind of been honing in on this skill, and it's also as a director in particular, but as a filmmaker, your gut plays so much a part in the whole process of making a film. And so, yeah, I think that's one thing that I would say I learned about myself.
That was so powerful. There's so much noise. There's so much noise. You know what I mean? In the world where it's like, because there's two things. You get taught that it's like, from a commerce background, it's always based on logic. Everything's logic. What are you thinking? And logic is important, very important.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we've erred too much on logic, and then we've never left room for intuition.
Mm.
And intuition is just as powerful. And sometimes you can't really explain logic through intuition. Your gut just says, or my heart just says, this is the thing that I should be doing right now. You know what I mean? And it seems like, well, that makes no sense, Kalai. Do you have pressure? Do you have pressure from the world to be like, when are you going to be a grown up? And actually, you know, you know what I mean? Because the world would want to put fear on you and say,
yeah,
get a real job or whatever. Did you have that kind of pressure at all?
Absolutely.
On yourself, maybe.
Yeah.
On yourself.
On yourself. Yeah, on myself. More so than anyone, I have great pressure to perform and, you know, do the right thing as a mother. As all sorts of things.
Big dynamic.
Yeah.
Because one, it's hard enough when it's by yourself. When you've got a child, and that's another level of. So, what gave you the confidence to, you know, to back your gut or your heart
into filmmaking,
or just maybe not even before the filmmaking, just to move with that? Who gave you that awareness that that's what you should be listening to? Was that yourself? Or did someone kind of remind you?
My parents, from a very young age, have always said to me, listen to your heart. You know, with any struggle I've had in life, and I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with both of them, they've always sat me down and they've said, what does your heart say? You know, and so I think that really it's stuck with me. And I kind of, as any teenager does, you know, stopped listening to them for a little bit. I was like, nah, not listening. These guys are struggling artists.
Yeah. They don't know what.
But I think the older I got and the more I learned about myself, I learned that that's a very, very powerful tool, is to listen to your heart and listen to your gut, and follow what feels right, you know. Yeah.
Sorry, what's that? I don't know why my mind went to Harry Potter. There's that scene, I don't know if in Harry Potter, where like where he takes like liquid luck. And then him and Hermione are trying to solve this problem. And I think it's Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah.
And then he goes, Harry, where are we going? And Hermione's like, Harry, where are you going? He's like, I think we should go to Hagrid's right now. And then he's like, Harry, we only have a few hours to solve this. Hagrid is a completely the other part of Hogwarts. Is like, it just feels right. So I think the whole point what J.K. Rowling was trying to talk about was like, you know, he drinks this potion. Of course, the thing is, it's just a potion, but the thing is, to try and communicate, it's just about what feels right.
Yeah.
And doing what feels right drives you towards the most favorable outcomes that you're looking for. So I don't know, my mind went there, but to bring it back, how did we get? At what point did going full forces on film, you know, become like the right feeling to say, okay, I'm going to take this very seriously now and build a career out of it?
Okay, so I'm now in Zimbabwe, single mother at this point. The father and I had separated, and so I needed to be serious. I needed to make a living for me and my son and send him to school. So I got a pretty normal job. I was working in for a safari camp, and I started out working in reservations, steady income. It was a lovely job. And slowly I kind of worked my way into the marketing team. And in the marketing team, I was just doing social media, but I started writing. And I suddenly remembered my passion for writing. I think I wrote my first poem when I was like 8 years old or something like that. And I've always loved writing. And I suddenly, through my work, I was able to write. And then they started asking me to write articles. And I just realized I loved the research process so much. I was learning so much. And I just had this sudden hunger. I wanted to do it more and more. And then at the same time, they sent me out to the safari camp and they were like, will you take some photographs? And I had a camera, took a couple of photographs, and then I also fell in love with that. And I was like, wow, what is this like burning thing that stayed dormant in me for so long? I need to fulfill this. So I was doing that for a while. At the same time, I met my partner, Richard Watson, who's the with Obsurca Film, so partner in life and work. He was at a crossroads in his life. He had just come back from university in the States studying business, and he was a bit lost, didn't really know what he wanted to do. We were friends at the time, and he saw one of my brother's films, and he was just like, whoa, I want to do that. That is what I want to do. So he went to Cape Town to study film. So he's now in Cape Town studying film.
Did you guys know each other this stage?
Yeah.
You guys know each other?
Yeah. So Richard and I, we had met.
You worked together, cool.
And
right. But he had never shot anything before like that.
No, he hadn't. He had gone to Cape Town with a couple of friends, and he had filmed with a GoPro or something this video of their experience, and he showed me the video, and I was like, wow, Richard, that's really, really cool.
That's fun.
You should, why don't you try, like, think of doing something like that? I could see he definitely had an eye, and he was like, nah, like, film, who does that? He grew up in Zimbabwe. It's like, no. No, look, this is my brother, this is what he does for a living. Showed him one of my brother's films, and it was like, for Richard, you could literally see the sparks, the light bulb. He was like, this is what I want to do. So he applied for after in Cape Town, and he went straight for it, and he went and studied. So Rich was busy, I think he was in his first year studying film, and he chose cinematography. He loved the camera and the technical aspect of things. He's very technical. And he was like, I need someone to write stories and direct me. And then we were just like, through conversation and being inspired by my brother, I was like, well, why don't we just do something for fun? And we decided we were friends with a lot of musicians. Very, very talented, beautiful Amy Warren, Amy and the Calamities. I don't know if you know her, but we decided to get...
Is that the one you shot in Bulawayo?
Yes, exactly. So we were like...
That's your first project together?
That was our second one. The first one we shot in Nyanga. It's called No Bison. The one in Bulawayo was the second video that we made. But we were like, why don't we just do this? Let's try for fun. And so it was a fun thing. A whole bunch of friends, we got together, we went to Nyanga, wrote like a narrative. Richard pretty much guided, because he was the one at university. He was like, this is what we have to do. And I just absolutely fell in love with it from the second we started doing it. I was like, right, there's no turning back now. This is it. This is what I have to do.
That's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. And by the way, I've watched that video. It's incredible. And I'm shocked to say that I'm actually genuinely blown away to think that what was the second project you worked on. It was mad. Like, it was on the train in Wayo, and then you went to the old colonial, like, I think it was like a train station or whatever. It just looked like
the quality is so good.
Yeah.
It's just breathtaking. So okay, so no, amazing. So you've clearly like you guys hit something, and there's all of this like good energy around. Like wow, okay, this is happening. How do we operate? Was that even like it was a project at this stage? How did you guys shift them to say, okay, this is cool, but how do we do this like intentionally? You know what I mean? Like to operationalize it. What was the thinking like there, and how did that come about?
So it was quite a process, building that courage to be able to say, okay, I'm going to step into this full time. You know, there's a lot of imposter syndrome with any artist will be able to relate to this. And particularly, you know, Rich was studying. He had his 3 years of studying. He knew he was going to be focused on that, and he knew when he came out of uni that he wanted to be in film. I think his kind of journey was a lot more straightforward, and he's a very focused kind of person. For me, I was still living in Zimbabwe at the time. I still continued on working with the job that I was doing, but it definitely wasn't fulfilling me. And that hunger kind of was just growing bigger and bigger. And I constantly had a battle with this imposter syndrome. Like, who am I? I'm not going to be able to do this. At the same time, there aren't many female filmmakers in the world to look up to and be like, oh, I can be like her. You know, it's intimidating. You think of a director, you think of Spielberg, you know, you think of all the guys and they
whatever, like, George Lucas, all of these guys, the baseball caps and the all the blue jeans, all blue jeans.
And I was like, I can't do that, you know, no way. And so I just continued on with my job, but the hunger eventually grew bigger than the fear, if you know what I mean. So it came to a point. But then what actually gave me the courage was this realization of the power of film to tell a story that can emotionally connect with an audience, that can motivate change within their lives. You know I've watched films where it's changed my view on the world, or it's somehow made me feel like I want to get up off of this seat and I want to go and join that organization, or I want to make it right in the world, you know. So I realized it was like that aha moment of all of this kind of trajectory of my life of wanting to make an impact. What a perfect way that you can do that through film, you know, and you can tell stories, real stories, and you can use music and you can use all of the different mediums, image, and you can evoke emotion within your audience to motivate positive social change. So I think it was the fact that it was outside of me, it was bigger than me. You know, this is about me, it's scary, and I'm still scared.
You still have fear. You still have fear now. We're like,
every set I go onto, I'm nervous. You know, I'm scared, but every single time I'm like, okay, this is bigger than me. It's gonna potentially impact someone else. So I think that was the thing that gave me the courage to say, okay, I want to do this. Then, so Richard was coming to the end of his university. By chance, I had an accident and I broke my back, ended up in hospital.
Whoa.
And so I couldn't work anymore in the job that I was doing. I was doing a little bit of work from home for them, but it wasn't enough to create an income. So this was kind of a massive pinnacle moment in my life where I now had a choice. It was going to take 6 months for me to heal. The people I was working for, unfortunately, couldn't keep me on for that long. And I was like, right, okay, what do I do now? And so I just decided to jump into film. Rich came back he didn't come back from university. I moved to Cape Town with Benjamin. I took a leap of faith, and we were just like, we're gonna try and make this work. And so that's how we started Obsurca Films.
This is why I do this. I love this. This is so good. Oh man, so there are so many thoughts going through my head. Firstly, congratulations for having the courage to take the leap of faith. I'm sure you're very proud of yourself, for actually having the confidence to actually do that. The second thought I have in my head is there's this Kanye West song called "Through the Wire" where he had to go through at a car accident. He breaks his jaw, and then he breaks his jaw, and then he talks about this. It's like when I had my accident, you realize that nothing in life is promised except death. And not to be very morbid, but that's true, right? Like we're here for a limited amount of time. Sometimes we think we will live forever, but the truth, if COVID-19 reminds us of anything, it's the fact that time is fleeting and life is very fickle. It's short, but it can be long too. But in many ways, it can be very fickle. So, whilst you're here, if you have the courage to do so, go for what you want. But it's tough. I hope that people listening to this won't have to get into a car accident where they break their back and have to get for that to be the thing. But how can I put it? I'm really sad about the accident. That's tough. But what came out of that was something very beautiful. You know what I mean? Like what came out of that was very beautiful. Was that moment when you had the accident like, Kalai, like, look, this is us. We might as well do this. What was your mental exercise like when you're going through that process? Of trying to figure out how to heal and move forward.
It was a whole process. That breaking my back was a huge thing in my life. I actually, when I was in the hospital, I was in Paranaatwa Hospital, and I was in so much pain. I was about to lose the use of my right leg. And I remember lying there in the hospital. They hadn't had any painkillers in the hospital for quite a while. The nurses were incredible. The care was incredible. But they gave me this painkiller and I was actually hallucinating and I thought that I was about to die. And when you think,
wow.
I didn't come close to dying by any means, but when you think that you're about to die, your perception changes massively. And so coming out of that hospital, I came out of there with a shifted perception on life and exactly resonate with what you've just said. Like, life is so short and you've got to do what is right and what fulfills your soul, And so I think that was the fundamental change of moving forward. It was a whole 6-month period before I even started getting back into it, and a whole lot of unpacking and figuring out life again. Around the same time, I also lost my grandfather, who I was living with, which was another kind of massive thing. But I think all of these struggles that we experience in life and the pain, there's so much learning that comes out of that and so much growth. And I've always seen, struggle, failure, pain as an opportunity to take like a little nugget of gold out of that experience and grow from it. And so I've always been quite grateful. Obviously, in hindsight, in the time, it's really hard to look at it with that perspective. But in hindsight, I've always been grateful for these experiences.
And how was your son during this process? That must have been traumatic for him too. Knowing his mom is in hospital. Like, how was he?
I think he was fine. I have such an incredible network of friends around me. I'm very, very fortunate. And this has been one of the reasons for moving back to Zimbabwe, actually, coming out of the pandemic. Community is everything. Although my family live overseas, they live all over the world. My soul family, who I found here in Zimbabwe, are everything. And they really played such a massive part in carrying me through that time. My best friend moved into my home and she literally took over my life. She was with me 24/7. She was really, really incredible. Richard flew up from South Africa, so I was very fortunate. So I think Benj was actually okay. I think it was, obviously he was missing where's mum, but I think it was fine for him. He was very supported through that time.
Whew. Hectic. So we're doing. I've never been in a car accident before. So touch wood, I won't. But of course,
just recap,
Yes.
it wasn't actually a car accident.
Good.
So it was actually self-inflicted. I don't know if you've ever heard of Matorishanga Quarry. There's a
I've been before, yeah.
Okay.
I've been, yeah.
So I did the cliff jumping. I jumped off of the cliff.
I've cliff jumped before.
I landed.
You landed on the water.
I landed
the water,
on
funny.
the water, but I landed on my coccyx, and basically the disc between my L1 and X5 erupted. Yeah. So don't do it, kids.
Okay, was it?
Cliff jump. It's not a good idea.
Damn, because it was almost like landing on on the concrete or like cement.
Yeah, exactly. You're landing on a very, very hard surface, and yeah, just going back to instinct and gut again. So funny. I have cliff jumped many times before in my life, in Ireland and Sweden and all over. And that particular day, I just hesitated, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. And everyone was like, come on, jump. It was like in the movies, and then I jumped. And for some reason, I just curled into a ball, and you're supposed to pin drop.
Yes.
And that was that. And I should have listened to myself and not jumped. But anyway, in hindsight, it all turned out. It turned out really, like exactly how it was supposed to turn out, because I had huge learning from that.
Yeah. I've actually done the jump before. There's a video of me jumping. I pin dropped, but yeah, now I'll be mindful of it next time. Okay, so we've pieced ourselves together. We've done the rehab. We've done the work to turn up together, and we've gone to Cape Town. We've said, cool, we're going to do this thing. We're overcoming imposter syndrome and fear, but the hunger is stronger than the fear at this point. Also, did you guys? Yeah, but you're in Cape Town now, right? Did you feel intimidated because South Africa is like the big market, if I can call it? Look, I think Zimbabwean talent, they can do well anyway, but sometimes there's this imposter syndrome that's almost added when Zimbabweans go to like Los Angeles or Cape Town, because it's a big market, and now it's like, oh, here I've never experienced. Now I'm in Cape Town trying to make film. Did you guys? What was that period like for you guys? Lifting this thing from the ground up.
Yeah, that transition was very intimidating. A lot of imposter syndrome. I was fortunate enough to meet the most wonderful assistant director. Her name is Christy Morley, who she was studying with Richard at the time. And she was such a guiding light through that process. We became very close, and she actually taught me so much. But yeah, I found it very intimidating. Cape Town, there are a lot of incredibly talented people. And there's a lot of competition, and particularly as a female director, as it is, it's quite a thing. People aren't used to a female still, even though we do speak about it, and it's definitely changing, but people just aren't used to a female being in a position of power. So you walk into a room. I remember my first commercial with Total Sport. And in the room, I was the only female in the room. And you can just see when you speak, there's this kind of like,
it's like, oh,
are you sure?
Like, this is right.
So that was really, really challenging to find my voice, to have the courage to guide, and to be strong in the messages that I was wanting to put out. It was really tough, but we were so fortunate to have a couple of Zimbabwean clients, and during that time we made a beautiful music video for the Djembe Mike's Rainmaker, which has just won a NAMA recently. So that was such a beautiful experience. We decided to bring the Djembe Monks. We got funding for them, and then decided to bring them to the Karoo Desert in South Africa. It was one of the guys, Kotso, it was his first time being out of Zimbabwe and seeing the ocean. So it was really special and meaningful experience. And so we did constantly have our foot in the door in Zimbabwe with our clients. We were kind of flying back and forth still. So we had this support from Zimbabwe that kind of helped us to continue on in Cape Town. And at the same time, Richard had made his own, through university, his own wonderful network of people, and he was starting to make a name for himself as a cinematographer. So we did have that support as well. So it was really good. We learned a lot. I do actually thrive being in situations that I'm not comfortable in, because again, I think it forces you to really learn and grow.
It pushes you.
Yeah, it pushes you forward. So I am grateful, as scary as it was at the time.
That's awesome. And then how about the move back to Zim? Like, what did that look like? You've been kept on for a while. I've seen some of the video, like there's a band I really like, even like the theme song for this podcast, like is Orga Orga by Flying Bantu. I know you guys did a video for them.
Yeah.
Sunshine City. So, what was it like moving back to Zim and kind of some projects like that? What was that like,
So just to backtrack, just before we moved back to Zimbabwe, the Flying Bantu had actually come on tour in South Africa, and we kind of went around with them and filmed their tour video, which was so wonderful, because they basically were family. A few years prior, they shot Sunshine City, and I just love the Flying Bantu. They're probably my favorite band in Zimbabwe. They're
so good.
Their lyrics are incredible, and so it was a really special time. And while they were in Cape Town, it was announced that their song Sunshine City, that we did a video for, had won the NAMA. The video had won the NAMA. So we were all together for that, but we were in Cape Town, so it was a really epic time. And then shortly after that, COVID came into play. So obviously, film industry in South Africa shut down completely. We had no work whatsoever, and it really, brought to our attention that we didn't really have community. We had a couple of friends in Cape Town, but we didn't really have a close community. And so, the pandemic was tough. We did our best to kind of keep going with what we could, but we started thinking seriously about where are we going to go from here. We had no idea, and what are we going to do? Are we even going to be able to continue filmmaking? And at that time, I think it was around the June, COVID had started in February or March or something like that, and then it was around June that we got a call and we got offered a contract to come back to Zimbabwe, and we'd be shooting for a year, which was very exciting. And it came at the perfect time. So, without hesitation.
Wait, how did this come about? Who was, I don't know if are you able to disclose it or not really?
Unfortunately, it didn't actually.
Not yet.
It fell through, so we're not able to talk about it. And
Cool.
In your notes, you'd asked about a low point in your career. So it was definitely a low point. So basically.
Yeah. The reason I want to say it, because sometimes, like, we talk about following your gut earlier, right? And then but it's not. It's always not going to be sunshine and roses and, you know what I mean, and fairy dust. Sometimes, like, beautiful things come out of the blue that you attract because you're moving in purpose and intention.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, they fall through. That's why I asked about, like, so when it fell through, how did you guys recover from that? It must have been tough. It's like you're moving with your gut, but then the world isn't giving you the answers that you need to be hearing in this tough moment. So what was that like, and how did you build up from there?
Yeah, it was really scary. You question yourself. You suddenly think, oh my gosh, have I done the right thing? Have I made the right decisions? So you've got a child to feed. It was a very scary time. So we basically got this contract. We didn't hesitate. We were like, okay, let's move back to Zimbabwe. We put a lot of work into it. I think we were working on that project for roughly 8 months. We had moved to Zimbabwe in, good faith that everything was going ahead. And then unfortunately it fell through. And we were suddenly absolutely broke. Coming out of the pandemic, had no savings. Neither of us have family in Zimbabwe either. So we were like, wow, what are we going to do now? We had no idea.
Damn.
Yeah, and at this point, Jessica Pulser, our producer, production manager, had joined us. She had actually joined us in June. So for her, it was really, really scary because now we have
He's like,
another person to be responsible for in this with us, you know. But we were
yeah.
very fortunate for our close friends took us and housed us for as long as it took for us to figure things out. And then slowly things just started turning around almost as soon as that door shut and the project fell through. Another door opened, and it was definitely more aligned with who we are as filmmakers and the types of stories we want to be putting out there and messages we want to be putting out there. And it's just, we feel like we've been supported ever since we've had since then we've had back-to-back jobs. Yeah, so we've been really, really lucky. Somehow we've just we've pushed through.
And you've worked on epic stuff. Like I saw like the Hope Masika video, you know, and with XQ. There's so much great work as kind of you've attracted. And you know, like how in storytelling there's like the hero's journey like arc. There's the call to adventure, and you guys got the call to adventure.
Yeah.
And then of course there's that tension in between there. You're trying to like, you think things are working out and they don't work out, and then people come in and help you. Then you have a guide that comes and helps you out through your process.
Yeah.
So who have been your biggest guides, you know, throughout this Zim foray?
I would say Jace Pulsar has been an incredible force that has kept me going. She has such a wonderful capacity to look at everything very logically and pragmatically. I'm quite an emotional person, so I tend to get caught up in the emotions. But Jess, since we knew each other from before, we were friends from before, and she took a leap of faith. We met in Cape Town at the beginning of the pandemic. She had been working overseas in Europe, and she was like, I don't know what to do. And she had all of the right skill sets for film, so she took a leap of faith and joined us, and been absolutely incredible. She really is very just kind of confident and steadfast, and nothing seems to shake her, Obviously, we all have our bad days, but she's been one of the most incredible driving forces, and the team that we have as Obsurca Films, I think we've all been each other's guides, Richard as well is one of the most calm people that I know. It takes a lot to kind of shake him.
Shake him, right?
So the combination of the three of us, we talk a lot. We really talk a lot. And we were fortunate enough to do during this whole process, we did like a couple of strength finder personality tests and figuring out psychologically how we could work well as a team. Like
I did the same things, yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible, and it's helped us so much. I think those two have been the biggest support, and then obviously family. Even though they're overseas, we talk a lot on Skype and on the phone, and they're always really, really encouraging. And then just the friends here have been, absolute like family, and that's what I love about Zimbabweans. They just are so open-hearted, so warm. What's mine is yours, and you feel okay. Yeah.
Beautiful. And then speaking to the future, I sometimes think like words are powerful because you speak them out, and sometimes you attract what you put out. What do you guys need in terms of whether it's assistance, or what do you guys want to work on or attract for your future? You know what I mean? With the work that you're working towards at the minute.
Okay, so yeah, I'm such a believer, definitely, in putting your vision down on paper, vocalizing it. Yeah, manifestation is super, super powerful, and we see that all the time. So
I've seen it all the time. Yep.
It's incredible. It really, really is, one of life's mysteries, and I love it. But what we're kind of working towards is we've been building our careers and building our portfolio visually, in music video and commercial work, and so now we're taking a kind of a movement more towards documentary, towards impactful storytelling, which has always been the trajectory, but we've just been building our skill sets and kind of honing in on our ability to be able to tell stories. So we're definitely we're moving in that path towards documentary storytelling, and also narrative. We're moving into narrative. So how? What was the question? How can you help us?
Yeah. What do you guys want help? Do you want distribution? Do you want audience? Do you want Netflix to come and buy what you guys are making?
Yeah.
You know, and it's a dream, right? Like in a dream, everything is perfect and works well. So it's okay to say what you want to say without fear. It's a dream, and it's important. You know what I mean? So say what you want to say.
Absolutely.
You know.
And thank you for the opportunity for also making me think. I think what would help hugely is definitely distribution, and also for channels to come and buy Zimbabwean African stories. I think there are so many American stories and European stories out there, but I think it would be so beautiful if we could tell Zimbabwean features and African stories, and that's what we're passionate about. And yeah, so I think distribution, producers, we need help on that end in getting these stories out on a global audience, on a global scale.
Gotcha.
From local, from people on the ground, I think support. I think the beginning of our conversation was around, what is it like in the Zimbabwean context? Film is an expensive thing. And I think the way that local people can support filmmakers, because we really, really want to play a part in this industry growing. It's really important for Zimbabweans, for us to tell our stories, And the way that you can support that is by understanding, all of the intricacies, how much it actually takes to make a film. And rather than trying to negotiate with the filmmaker, try and find the funding to make it happen. It can happen. There is funding out there to make it happen. But I think where we're falling short is the filmmaker is putting forward, this is how much it costs. The client is then negotiating. And then
to bring
sustainable for the filmmaker to make films in Zimbabwe. And so they either go and do something else, or they're trying to juggle too many things and they're not able to hone in on their skill because they're too busy doing other things, or they go and make films somewhere else. And that's really sad. So I think for anyone who can afford to have a film made, or even if you can't, like musicians like Flying Bantu, they've gone out and they've found that funding to then pay us to make a film. So anyone can do it. If you have a story that you want to tell, come talk to us, and together we can put together a strategy to figure out how to get the funding so that everyone is paid correctly for their work, so that it's sustainable for the artists, and so that we're able to tell Zimbabwean stories.
Kind of like all pieces working together. It's like people believing in the work itself, getting that funded, everyone getting paid what fair value for the work being done.
Yes.
But there's also distributors, whether that's foreign or local, or wherever in the world, then buying it at the right price. That's fair value for everyone.
For sure.
I think the future is going there. It'll take a while, I think, to get. Let me not say that. I think we'll get there. I think digital is very promising. And the world now more than ever, I think, is hungrier for foreign content. We're seeing that from Disney movies to Pixar movies, everywhere. Like it's everywhere. Everyone wants different flavors to eat and consume now. So I think we're getting there. And it's just kind of like, for you guys to keep believing. I know. So I want to have this conversation because I think the work you guys do is great, and you just have to keep believing that, and then making it, profitable as well. To bring us full circle, with regards to I think two parts. The Zimbabwean story, I think I was saying to someone earlier, it's like we all have these pens and we're all writing our little part in this greater, broader narrative that is the Zimbabwean story. And it just doesn't start at 1980. It starts even way before that, from grades and before, right? We've gone through many challenges right now, felt a bit of blimps, but it will live on far beyond us. But now is our moment in this Zimbabwean story. One thing from a character, you talked about representation earlier. One thing for some reason that I haven't seen enough representation of is, and not to bring race into it, but I think it's important to speak about, is white women represented on screen. I found that very alarming. That like, and not just, I think everyone's important. Everyone has a part to play in the story. There's what, black men, black women, Asian, everyone is a. Apart from Kirsty Coventry, you never actually see a woman on screen. Gemma Griffith is the only second person I've seen, and she was born, recently,
Yeah.
and I found that really like alarming. So, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think my hope is that, through the work that you do and some of the work that you guys will continue to do, is at least what I'm trying to do as well, is trying to tell the broad spectrum of stories, whether that's through yourself or any of the other people that I have in the podcast. It's to reiterate this vision that like everyone has a part to play in crafting this next piece of the Zimbabwean story. So I hope you guys do it for representation's sake. You know what I mean? I don't know if you agree with that sentiment, where there's not many white women are represented on screen in Zim. I don't know if you agree, or am I being
No, for sure. You do agree, and actually, weirdly, it's not something that I've even thought about. I haven't even put too much thought into that, but you're definitely right. And I think part of the music videos that we made for Amy Warren, for example, and why we chose for her to be in the video and tell those stories was because Amy she's a real girl, real Zimbabwean girl who comes from small town Bulawayo. And both music videos, in fact, were kind of this manifestation of the dream world that she lives within the context of Bulawayo. And yeah, I think something in that was, the desire to tell that story was because you just don't see those stories. So yeah, it's a really good book, and thank you for sparking that.
For the spark. Yeah, I mean, you see Nick Price and you see all of these other guys on TV. Like, I grew up watching Nick Price play golf. I said, wow, and you have all the other people. And Kirsty Coventry, I don't know, there just need to be more of everyone on screen.
Yes,
more of everyone,
absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's important, regardless of social economic class. Everyone has a part to play,
For sure.
And then my last question is, in speaking to the future, what does the shift in the Zimbabwean narrative look like for you for the better? What is that? And you can say whatever you want to say in reference to that.
Shift towards the better. I think as soon as we, as people, can discover our shared humanity, we are going to move forward in leaps and bounds. I think we're still so segregated in Zimbabwe. And it
big time.
So sad, and we don't want to go into politics, but politics has a huge part to play. But whether it be race, whether it be economically, we're living, tribally even. We're living very disconnected from each other, and we know it's common knowledge that together we're stronger. So I do feel that as soon as we discover our shared humanity through whatever that may be, I think it's going to help us in a huge way. And we are seeing it. We're definitely seeing it. I think Zimbabwe is coming from a very broken place, but there's so many exciting, beautiful things happening at the moment as a result of that. So there's a lot to look forward to for the future, I think.
It almost speaks to, you talked about coming from a broken place, and beautiful things can come out of it. Actually, I had an interview with someone recently about this notion. How my notion is that because every child is born perfect, and then sometimes you break and you go through trauma in your life, and then your responsibility is to find ways to heal and then grow from that point. So similar to your accident when you hurt your back, sometimes we break, but hopefully we can heal and grow with renewed understanding and learning from where we're coming from.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Kalai. It's been super. It's gone on longer than I hope, but it's perfect. This has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it's important, and all the best with all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been wonderful and inspiring talking to you.
Oga, Pani no muka.